If that puppy hadn't barked, I never would have looked down that storm drain. I was walking home from the diner, same as every Tuesday night. Small town, nothing ever changes here in Fayetteville, Kentucky. My shift ended at 9 sharp, and the streets were already dark and quiet. Just porch lights and the soft whir of bugs tapping against street lamps. I'd cut through Willow Lane because it's faster and usually peaceful. But tonight, I heard a sound that froze me mid-step. It was faint at first, then sharper, a yip, high-pitched, desperate. I turned around slowly, trying to figure out where it came from. Another yip, closer now. And then I spotted it. A tiny brown puppy, maybe the size of a football, standing near the edge of the sidewalk with its front paws up on the grate of a storm drain. Its ears perked up as I approached, and it let out a tiny growl like it was trying to protect something down there. My stomach tightened. I knelt beside the drain and peered in. That's when I saw the second pup, barely moving. Tangled in some old plastic and lying in maybe an inch of dirty runoff water. I didn't think. I dropped my bag, yanked off my jacket, and started trying to wedge open the grate. 2 passing joggers stopped to help. Bless their hearts. One of them ran to grab a crowbar from his truck. We lifted the cover together, and I reached in. The smell hit me first. Wet leaves, old metal, and something sour. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. I stretched as far as I could, and the healthy pup yipped again, dancing anxiously on the edge. When I pulled the second puppy out, he was soaked, shaking, and weak, but breathing. I wrapped both of them in my jacket and thanked the joggers 100 times before heading home. My place is just a few blocks away, and I kept whispering to the pups the whole walk back. "You're okay now, babies. You're okay." I cleaned them up in my bathroom sink. The healthy one, a scrappy little guy with one white paw and a spot on his back, kept trying to climb the sink walls like he owned the place. The weaker one, a darker brown with droopy eyes, just curled into the towel and dozed off. I called the vet's emergency number and explained what happened. He said to bring them in first thing tomorrow morning and to keep them warm and hydrated. That night, I slept with both pups in a box beside my bed, lined with flannel shirts and an old heating pad. The stronger one whimpered until I placed my hand in the box, then finally settled. The other didn't make a peep. I lay awake for hours listening to their tiny breaths and wondering how they ended up there. Who left them? And why the drain? The next morning, I woke up groggy but hopeful. Both pups were still there. The quiet one had lifted his head, and his eyes looked brighter. I warmed some chicken broth and dipped my finger in it to let them lick it off. They both took to it eagerly. That felt like a win. After feeding them, I stepped outside to check the mailbox. Nothing unusual ever shows up in there, just coupons and utility bills. But today, I found a small white envelope with no stamp, no return address, just my name in shaky handwriting. I stood on my porch for a long time before opening it. I don't know why my hands trembled. Inside was a single piece of lined paper, folded once. I unfolded it carefully and read the message. "Thank you for saving them. I couldn't keep them safe. I didn't know who else would. Please don't try to find me." That was it. I read it twice, then a third time. My heart pounded in my ears. Who wrote this? How did they know I found the puppies? Had they been watching? And what kind of situation forces someone to leave 2 tiny lives in a drain? I called the vet and told him we were coming early. The puppies were bundled into a laundry basket, and I set them gently in the passenger seat. The whole drive over, I kept looking at them, and that letter on the dashboard. At the clinic, Dr. Halverson, gray hair, calm voice, hands like warm velvet, checked them both. The stronger pup he declared healthy, maybe 5 weeks old. The smaller one, he said, was dehydrated but improving. He gave me some electrolyte mix and a starter vaccine. "You caught it just in time," he told me. "Another few hours in that drain, and the little one might not have made it." Back home, I laid out an old playpen in my living room and filled it with towels, bowls of water, and a plush duck I'd bought years ago for my neighbor's dog. The stronger pup, who I'd started calling Boots because of that white paw, was already playing with the duck like it was prey. The smaller one lay close by, just watching. The note stayed on my coffee table all day. I kept replaying it over and over in my mind. Someone knew I'd find them, or at least hoped I would. Someone trusted me enough to walk away and leave them in my care. I should have felt scared. But somehow, all I felt was this overwhelming need to make sure I didn't let them down. That evening, as I sipped tea and watched the pups sleep, I realized something else. Someone out there had probably made a heartbreaking choice. And they did it not out of neglect, but out of hope. Hope that someone would do what they couldn't. Maybe they saw me walk past the diner every week. Maybe they noticed how I always stopped to pet neighborhood dogs or left out scraps behind the kitchen. Maybe they knew I'd help. I didn't know who they were, and maybe I never would. But I was sure of one thing. These puppies weren't just a random rescue. They were a message. And I'd just started reading it. The feeling of being watched didn't leave me for days. Even when nothing strange happened, it clung to the edges of my thoughts like smoke that wouldn't clear. I'd glance out the window while washing dishes and swear a figure ducked behind the hedges. When I took Lucky on his short walks, I always felt a beat behind the rhythm of the neighborhood, like something was quietly adjusting to our pace. I didn't tell anyone, not my mom, not the ladies at the diner, not even Dr. Karen. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, someone left a creepy note about my dog and now I think I'm being stalked?" I could already hear the laughter. Lucky didn't seem bothered. He grew bolder by the day. His bark got louder, his stride steadier. He dragged his squeaky toy around the apartment like he was on a mission, and his favorite spot became the back of the couch where he could perch and look out the window. Sometimes he'd growl at nothing. I wasn't sure what unnerved me more, the growling or the silence that followed it. The number from the flyer still burned in my pocket like a match I couldn't strike. I wanted answers, but I didn't trust what they'd be. Whoever left that note knew where I lived. That fact alone kept me from dialing until Sunday night. I was coming back from the store, arms full of groceries, when I saw the same kid Greg had described. Sandy hair, hunched shoulders, hoodie zipped to the neck. He was across the street, staring at my building. He saw me and bolted. I dropped the bag of cereal on the sidewalk and ran after him. "Hey, wait!" He was fast, cutting through the park with the confidence of someone who knew every tree root and bend. I chased him halfway to the high school before I lost him behind the maintenance shed. I stood there, panting, frustrated, and very alone. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. By the time I got back to my building, Lucky was whining at the door, tail wagging frantically when he saw me. I dropped to my knees and hugged him tight. "What is going on, buddy?" I couldn't sleep that night, so I finally picked up the phone and called the number. It rang once, twice. Then a man's voice answered. Gruff. Older. "Yeah." I froze. I saw your flyer. About the puppy." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Do you have him?" I didn't answer right away. "He was behind a dumpster. I've had him about a week now. He's okay." More silence. "You need to bring him to me. Now!" The command in his voice made my skin crawl. "Do you have proof he's yours? I'm not just handing him over to anyone." There was a pause, and then he hung up. Just like that. I stared at the phone, heart pounding. What kind of person doesn't even ask how the dog is doing? No thank you, no is he okay, just a demand. I didn't like it, at all. The next morning, there was another note. This one was taped to my front door. "You shouldn't have called. Don't make this worse." I tore it down and paced the apartment for an hour. Something about that tone, that signatureless threat, made me feel like I'd stepped into a story that had no clear good guys. And worst of all, it didn't feel random. Someone wanted Lucky gone. Maybe not because he was valuable, but because he was dangerous. That thought didn't make sense at first. He was a puppy. Clumsy, sweet, innocent. What danger could he possibly represent? Unless he had seen something, or had something, or was part of something. By Tuesday, I was jumping at every noise. I took Lucky to the park in the early morning when few people were around. It was a small park bordered by a creek and a row of poplar trees, and I'd started walking the edges on purpose, always keeping my back to open space. That morning, Lucky froze beside a bench and sniffed at the grass. When I crouched to see what he was sniffing, I found a piece of torn fabric. Gray. Rough. Like it had come off a work jacket. I looked up and saw a small security camera on the corner of the nearest light pole. I'd never noticed it before. It blinked. When we got home, I found a box on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a dog collar. Red leather. Studded. Old. And a photo. Lucky sitting in a crate. He looked younger, maybe a month old, and terrified. Behind him was a man's hand, tattooed with something that looked like a chain link pattern. I sat down on the stoop and just stared. I didn't know what was worse. That someone had taken that photo, or that they wanted me to see it. That night, I moved Lucky's bed into my room and kept the porch light on. I didn't sleep much. Every creak in the hallway outside made my chest tighten. But morning came, and Lucky's tail thumped against the wall, like it always did when he saw me. I took the photo and the collar to Dr. Karen. She stared at them, then shook her head. "That's not good," she said quietly. "You recognize the tattoo?" "Not exactly, but I've seen dogs come through here from that part of town with collars like this. Dogfighting rings. Illegal ones. They use pups for training sometimes." My stomach dropped. I mean, Lucky might have been on his way to becoming a bait dog, but someone let him go, or he escaped. I sat very still. Everything made sense now. The note, the photo, the threats. Lucky wasn't just lost. He was a secret someone didn't want found. "Can I do anything? Should I report it?" "You could, but unless you have a name or address, they probably won't do much. Those rings move around constantly. They don't leave easy trails." I left her office with a mix of anger and protectiveness boiling inside me. I hugged Lucky tighter than I ever had when we got home. He didn't just survive something awful. He was still in danger. That night, I started sleeping with a flashlight and a baseball bat beside the bed. 2 days later, someone tried to break in. It was 3 a.m. I heard the back window creak. Lucky barked, full-throated, ferocious, and I grabbed the bat. I saw the shadow of a man retreating just as I reached the kitchen. The screen had been cut. I called the police. They came, took a report, looked around, found no footprints. "Might have been a drifter," the officer said. "Nothing stolen." But I knew it wasn't random. That morning, I finally called my brother, Sam. He lived 2 hours away, out in the hills, on a big piece of land where no one showed up uninvited. He answered after 2 rings. "Hey, you okay? Can I come stay for a while? With the dog?" He didn't ask questions. "I'll get the guest room ready." I packed what I could in 2 bags, loaded Lucky into the car, and left just after sundown. As I pulled away from the curb, I glanced at the mailbox one last time. Another note. "You're running out of places to hide." I didn't stop to read it twice. Lucky curled up on the passenger seat and let out a long sigh, like he knew this ride was different. I reached over and scratched behind his ear. "We're going to figure this out, I promise." I just didn't know how deep this was going to go. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into Sam's driveway, a long, winding path lined with pine trees that seemed to block out the rest of the world. His old farmhouse sat at the end like a forgotten postcard, peeling white paint, a crooked wind chime made of silverware, and a wraparound porch with a swinging bench. As I stepped out of the car, Lucky stretched and yawned beside me, then immediately bolted toward the porch, tail wagging. Sam opened the screen door, coffee mug in hand, and raised an eyebrow. "Is that him?" "That's Lucky," I said, hauling my bag out of the trunk. "Doesn't look like trouble." "He's got more secrets than I do," I muttered, and Sam gave me a curious look but didn't press. Inside, the house smelled like cedar and bacon. Sam had already laid out a blanket in the guest room and put a bowl of water on the floor. Lucky sniffed every corner before settling under the kitchen table, like he'd been there 100 times. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" Sam asked, sliding a plate of eggs toward me. I told him everything. From the night I found Lucky to the notes, the strange phone call, the photo, the attempted break-in. He listened in silence, arms crossed, face unreadable. When I was done, he stood, pulled his phone from the counter, and started dialing. "Who are you calling?" "I've got a buddy on the county sheriff's team. He won't make it official unless we want him to, but he can run a plate or look into that phone number you mentioned." I didn't argue. The next few days were the quietest I'd had in weeks. Sam's place was surrounded by forest, and the nearest neighbor was over a mile away. I spent the mornings walking Lucky through the trails behind the barn, watching him sniff through leaves and bark excitedly at squirrels. He'd gained weight. His coat looked healthier, and he didn't flinch at every noise anymore. But even here, I couldn't fully relax. Every time the wind knocked a branch against the window, I jolted. I checked the locks twice each night, and I kept that photo, the one of Lucky in the crate, tucked under my pillow like some kind of anchor. On the 4th night, Sam came in with a slip of paper in his hand. "Got something," he said. The phone number from the flyer had been traced to a burner, bought at a gas station 2 towns over, paid for in cash. "They don't want to be found," he added. "But here's the thing. My friend pulled security footage from the store. Guy who bought the burner? Big dude. Maybe 6'3". Snake tattoo down one arm. Looked military. Or ex-something." My stomach turned. "Same guy in the photo?" "Hard to tell. His face was angled away. But it's a good guess." That night, I dreamed I was in a dark basement, a low ceiling, the sound of dogs barking. I was holding Lucky, and someone was pounding on the door, getting closer. I woke up drenched in sweat, and Lucky was curled beside me, snoring softly. The next morning, Sam offered to put up trail cams around the property. I agreed. He had 4 old motion-triggered cameras from when he used to track deer. By lunch, he'd mounted them on the trees near the driveway, the barn, and one right near the back porch. 2 nights later, the one near the barn caught something. A man. Just a shadow, really, tall and hunched, walking along the tree line. Not approaching, not running. Just watching. Sam printed the still frame and taped it to the fridge. "Looks like your trouble followed you." I felt cold all over. "What does he want?" Sam shook his head. "Don't know, but I think it's time to stop waiting. Time to dig." We made a plan. The burner phone had to be part of something bigger. If Lucky really escaped from a dogfighting ring, there had to be others. I remembered the name of the vet tech at Dr. Karen's, who once mentioned rescuing pit bulls from a fighting situation. Her name was Marla. I called the clinic and asked to speak with her. "You probably don't remember me," I started. "You're the one with the shepherd pup, Lucky, right?" "That's me. Can I ask you something weird? Did you ever hear about a group operating in Fayetteville, or nearby, that use dogs like mine in fights?" Silence. Then, "You should come by, after closing. I can't talk over the phone." That evening, Sam drove me down to the clinic. Marla let us in through the back and locked the door behind us. Her expression was serious. "A few years ago," she began, "we had a string of dogs come in with signs of abuse. Scars, old breaks, behavioral issues. None of them chipped. A couple had the same type of collar your dog had." She walked over to a filing cabinet and pulled out a thin manila folder. Inside were photocopies of intake forms, scribbled notes, and 2 photos of mangy, injured dogs. We suspected they were being used to train fighting dogs, but no one ever claimed them, and we couldn't prove anything. Animal control got involved once, but it fizzled. No leads. "Do you remember a man with a snake tattoo?" Marla nodded slowly. "He came in once, asked about getting a dog treated without any questions. Said it was a stray he found, but the dog was half-starved and terrified. Karen turned him away. That was the last we saw of him." I looked down at Lucky, who sat obediently at my feet. He was staring at Marla, tail wagging gently. I rubbed his head. He was meant to be part of something cruel, and now they want him back. "Why him specifically?" Sam asked. Marla's brow furrowed. "Some dogs, especially young ones, get trained. They're used to test aggression, and sometimes they witness things, hear things. If someone's using the dog for illegal purposes and they think he could identify them, maybe they're worried." "He's a puppy," I said. "I've seen men go to prison for less than what your dog might be connected to." When we got back to Sam's, it was past midnight. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch with a flashlight in my lap, Lucky pressed against my leg, ears twitching at every breeze. Then I had an idea. The photo. The one with the tattooed hand. I scanned it onto my laptop and used the zoom function. The man's wrist had a faded scar, and beside it, the edge of a watch. Cheap, plastic, with a blue stripe. I uploaded the image to a local pet rescue forum with a message. "Does anyone recognize this man? I believe he's connected to illegal dog activity." I didn't expect a response, but 2 hours later, I got a private message. Username, jbarber43. "That guy's name is Mike, used to live near Liberty Street. Had a whole shed full of crates. Moved out 6 months ago. Left everything behind." I messaged back frantically. "Where, exactly?" He sent the address. The next morning, Sam and I drove out there. The house was a wreck. Boarded windows, trash-strewn lawn, and a sagging roof. But the shed was still there. Padlocked. Sam snapped it open with bolt cutters. Inside were old cages, a broken treadmill, and buckets that smelled like blood and bleach. The place reeked of old secrets. In one corner, under a tarp, we found a logbook. Dog names, dates, notes, some with X's next to them, others with numbers. It looked like a betting ledger. And then, at the very back, a page with a name I hadn't expected. Lucky, young, too soft, marked for discard. I stood frozen. He wasn't supposed to live. Sam folded the paper carefully. "We need to get this to someone." "It won't stop them," I said. "But maybe it'll slow them down." As we stepped out of the shed, I caught a glint in the woods beyond the fence. A figure. Watching. Again. I didn't chase them. This time I just stared back. Lucky barked once, loud and clear, and the figure vanished. I picked him up and hugged him to my chest. "You're not soft. You're a survivor." Back at the house, we scanned the ledger, sent it to the sheriff's office through Sam's contact, and then sat in the living room in silence. Sam looked at me. "They know you're not letting go." "I'm not." That night, Lucky barked again. Only this time, it wasn't at a shadow. It was at something approaching from the road. Lights, slowly moving, and then the sound of tires on gravel. We waited. The car stopped at the end of the driveway, then backed away into the night. Lucky didn't move from the window for hours. Neither did I. The next morning, I woke to the sound of gravel shifting again. Sam was already outside, coffee mug in hand, staring down the driveway like he expected someone to return. Lucky was at the window, tail stiff, ears up. I joined them, heart already thumping against my ribs. But the road was empty. "Same car?" I asked. "I think so," Sam said. "Too far to catch a plate, but whoever it is, they know we're here. And they're getting braver." Lucky paced by the door for a full 5 minutes before settling by Sam's boots. I glanced at the trail camera monitor on the kitchen counter. Nothing new from overnight, just wind-blown trees and a raccoon nosing around the porch steps. But the hair on my arms stayed up all morning like it knew something I didn't. I needed help. Real help. So I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A woman named Caroline, who used to volunteer at the shelter where I'd worked in college. Back then, she'd been the one organizing raids on illegal breeders, digging up information where the police didn't look. She knew the underbelly of the dog world better than anyone I'd met. When she picked up, her voice was as sharp and steady as I remembered. "Took you long enough," she said. "You're the one with the shepherd mix, right? The forum post with the crate photo?" "That's me. I didn't expect you to see it." "I see everything. What's going on?" I told her. All of it. The notes, the man in the shadows, the photo, the ledger. Caroline didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I finished, she said, "Sounds like you stepped into something very old." "What do you mean?" "There's a network operating through southern Kentucky and Tennessee. Not just dog fighting, but trafficking too. High-stakes betting, drug laundering, the works. The man in your photo might be someone we've been watching for years. We don't have a name, just a nickname. Chain. Because of the tattoo? That's part of it. But it's also how he trains the dogs. Chains and cages. He's brutal." I glanced at Lucky, who was dozing beside the couch, twitching in his sleep. I felt a swell of anger rise behind my ribs. "What do I do?" "Stay put, and don't try to handle this alone. If you have that ledger, scan and email me every page. I'll get it into the right hands. And one more thing. Chain doesn't let things go. If Lucky got out, he was either let go or escaped. Either way, Chain wants him back to erase a loose end." My throat went dry. "Erase?" "You know what I mean. I sent Caroline everything we had. Sam scanned every page, even the ones that were nearly unreadable. Some had coded notes, symbols, initials, weight classes. Caroline replied within the hour. This matches intel from a raid we did in 2019. Same structure, same shorthand. This ledger might be the missing link. But knowing we had something important didn't make me feel safer. It made me feel exposed. The next night, we heard movement again. Not just gravel. Footsteps on the porch. Sam and I crept down the hallway with flashlights. I held the bat tight, my other hand gripping Lucky's collar to keep him quiet. When Sam flung open the door, no one was there. But something was left behind. A bag. Inside was another collar, not Lucky's. This one was newer, bright red, clean, and a note folded underneath. Trade. This one for yours. No questions. No police. I swallowed hard. Someone was trying to make a deal. But why would they offer another dog? What kind of person leaves a living being as a bargaining chip? Sam leaned down and opened the small carrier next to the bag. Inside was a trembling puppy, skinny, wide-eyed, and missing patches of fur. Lucky growled low in his throat. We brought the pup inside. She was terrified, but not aggressive. Sam gave her water while I checked for a chip. Nothing. Just like Lucky. She's bait, I said quietly. They're trying to distract us. Or test you, Sam replied. See if you'll cave. See if you're scared. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound felt like a warning. I sat between Lucky and the new pup, watching their chests rise and fall. The next morning, Caroline called. I sent your scans to a contact at the State Bureau, she said. They want to meet you. Is it safe? No. But it's necessary. They think you can help identify one of the handlers. The meeting was set at a rest stop off I-65, just outside Bowling Green. Sam drove. I held Lucky in my lap the entire time. The agent, a man named Fuller, wore a baseball cap and sunglasses. He never took them off. He asked me to describe the man from the photo. I told him everything: height, voice, tattoo, attitude. That's Chain, all right, he said. He's been operating under different names. We've had eyes on him, but nothing stuck. Your photo puts him at a known site. So arrest him. We need more, real-time movement, proof of transactions. But we're close. He handed me a burner phone. If you see anything, any movement, any contact, call me. Directly. Don't wait. Back at Sam's, we added locks to the windows and nailed boards to the basement entrance. I took the new puppy, whom I started calling Millie, to Dr. Karen, who confirmed she was underfed, but would be okay with time. Lucky stayed by her side all afternoon. He licked her ear, let her eat from his bowl. It broke my heart in a whole new way. 2 nights later, we got our first real break. One of the trail cams captured a truck. Black, no plates, parked just outside the edge of the woods. A figure stepped out, walked 20 paces toward the barn, then returned. The timestamp said 3:17 a.m. I sent the photo to Agent Fuller. He replied immediately. Truck matches one registered to an alias tied to Chain. You're on his radar, and he's circling. What do I do? Stay visible during the day. Stay locked at night. We're closing in. Don't let him scare you into running. I didn't run, but I didn't rest either. That Saturday, Sam and I took both dogs to a clearing behind the house. It was quiet and sunny, and for a moment it felt like nothing bad had ever happened. Millie bounded through the tall grass like she'd never known fear. Lucky chased butterflies. Then Sam's phone buzzed. Caroline, he said, handing it to me. Her voice was urgent. They know who you are. They know your name. What? Someone inside the network traced the forum post back to you. You've got to prepare. They don't bluff. If they can't buy you off, they'll try something else. I have 2 dogs now. I can't just vanish. Then stay protected. Don't be alone. And don't let anyone in. That evening, I moved the dogs' beds into the room with the least windows. Sam set up a motion light outside and kept the shotgun by the door. We slept in shifts, and still, the fear pressed in. Around 4 a.m., Lucky started growling, then barking, then snarling. I jumped up and peered out the window. A shadow moved behind the barn, then another. I grabbed the burner phone and called Fuller. They're here, 2 of them, at least. Stay inside, we're 5 minutes out. Sam moved to the door, weapon ready. I locked the dogs in the bathroom, not wanting them near the chaos. Then we waited. A thud came from the back porch. Then the sound of footsteps, too many to count. Someone tried the handle. Sam shouted, "Leave! Now! Police are on the way!" There was silence, then retreat. The sound of tires spinning on gravel, fading. Fuller arrived with 2 cruisers. They scanned the area, found footprints, a broken fence post, and a small knife lodged into the siding. They weren't just scouting, he said. They came to send a message. What now? Now we move first. Fuller laid out a plan. He had enough evidence to justify a raid, especially with the ledger and the timeline of events. They would move on one of the known sites by the end of the week. But until then, I needed to be watched. 2 plainclothes officers were assigned to monitor the house in rotating shifts. One stayed down the road in a parked car. The other walked the perimeter every few hours. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to relief. But I didn't let myself feel safe. Not yet. The officers rotated in 12-hour shifts, and by the second morning I'd memorized their names. Officer Kane, the younger one, had freckles and wore scuffed boots. He drank his coffee black and talked softly when he talked at all. Officer McGregor was older, ex-military by the way he moved, and kept a leather-bound notebook in his back pocket. He didn't talk much either, but Lucky warmed up to him quickly. That said a lot. Life at Sam's took on a strange rhythm, half normal, half like we were waiting for the other shoe to drop. In the mornings, I walked Lucky and Millie through the side trails, staying within view of the house. Sam insisted I take a walkie-talkie every time I stepped outside, and the officers stayed close without hovering. In the evenings, I cooked dinner while Sam went over old maps of the region with McGregor, trying to pinpoint places that might be used as temporary holding areas for dogs. There was always tension beneath everything, like a thread stretched too tight. But for the first time in weeks, I wasn't handling it alone. On the 3rd day of protection detail, Caroline called. Her voice was sharper than usual, but not panicked. "We've confirmed a location." "Where?" "An abandoned cattle farm about 40 minutes southeast of you, near Copper Ridge. Surveillance picked up movement late last night, men loading crates into the barn. Night vision confirmed dogs. At least a dozen." My stomach flipped. "You're raiding it?" "Tomorrow night. Quiet, coordinated. If we move too early, they'll scatter. We need everything documented. If we get it right, we shut them down permanently." "Is Chain going to be there?" "That's the plan." I felt like I should have felt relief. But instead, I just stared out the window at Lucky sprawled in a patch of sunlight, Millie curled against his side. "They're going to try something before then," I said. "I can feel it." "You might be right. Stay alert. And if anything happens, call Fuller. Immediately." That night, Sam didn't sleep. He sat on the porch in an old rocking chair with his shotgun across his lap. Officer Kane made a show of casually walking around the house every 20 minutes. Millie whimpered in her sleep, and Lucky growled softly at the front door, even when no one was there. Around 2:30 a.m., it started. It began with the lights. Every floodlight on the property blinked off at once. The porch light, the motion sensors, even the lamp over the stove. Sam jumped to his feet. I grabbed the walkie. "Lights are out. Repeat, lights are out." A click. Kane's voice crackled through. "On it?" McGregor appeared on the back steps 30 seconds later, flashlight sweeping. "Could be a cut line. Generator's still functional. Means it's not internal." I herded the dogs into the hallway, heart hammering. Millie trembled under the coat rack, but Lucky stood in front of her, tail stiff, eyes locked on the front door. Sam moved through the house like a shadow, checking each window, each lock. He paused by the laundry room and pointed. The window was cracked, just an inch. We hadn't left it that way. Sam motioned for silence, raised his shotgun, and crept forward. I stayed low, pressing my back to the wall. Lucky didn't bark this time. He was silent, muscles coiled. Then there was a sound from outside. Whistling. A low, tuneless whistle that started behind the barn and moved closer. The kind of sound you make when you want someone, or something, to come to you. I reached into the side table and grabbed the burner phone. Speed dialed Fuller. Straight to voicemail. Sam whispered, "Whoever's out there knows the dogs." The whistling stopped. Then came a knock on the door. Not rushed, not loud. Just a steady, slow knock. Sam raised his voice. "Police are on the property. Back away now." No response. Then a voice, low and gravelly. "You've got something of mine. Trade's still open." I stepped forward before Sam could stop me. "She's not for sale." "She wasn't mine. The boy was. You don't know what you're keeping. That dog saw too much." Sam cocked the shotgun. "Step off the porch or I'll fire." A pause, then retreating footsteps. By the time Kane circled around, there was no one in sight. No car, no tracks. Just a coiled rope left on the edge of the porch and a bone, clean and long, set upright beside it. Message received. Fuller showed up an hour later with 2 more agents. He scanned the porch, took photos, and swore under his breath. "That was Chain," he said. "Testing your resolve. He's slipping. That's good." "Doesn't feel good," I replied. He looked at Lucky, who stood between us with his tail still bristled. "He's trying to make you doubt your safety. Don't give him the win." The next 24 hours were a blur. The raid was set for midnight the following night. Carolyn called to brief me on the setup. They'd be using thermal imaging, drone surveillance, and a coordinated ground team. She promised it would be clean, but I couldn't relax. Not even a little. That afternoon, I sat by the back door while Millie gnawed on a toy beside me. Lucky kept staring at the window. Not growling, just watching. Then he barked once, sharply. When I looked up, I saw it. A flash of silver, like a watch band, just at the edge of the woods. I ran outside before anyone could stop me, shouting, "Hey, get back here!" But the woods were empty. The wind picked up. A bird took flight from a low branch. Nothing else. I turned back toward the house. There was something sticking out of the mailbox. A note. Sam reached it before I did. He pulled it out slowly, unfolded the page. It read, "You've got until midnight. After that, I don't play nice." Fuller ordered an early response, Officers circled the house with higher-grade surveillance. Drones were launched. Lucky wouldn't leave my side, not even to drink water. Millie curled beneath my feet and wouldn't come out. By 10:00 p.m., everyone was in place. Fuller called from the raid site. "We move in 2 hours. Hold tight. The more pressure you feel, the closer we are to ending this." I stood in the living room with both dogs in my arms, staring out the window at the darkness. Every noise felt like an alarm. Every gust of wind, a whisper. Sam stepped beside me, silent for a long while. Then he said, "I think Lucky was meant to find you." I didn't answer, just bent down and kissed the top of the pup's head. Whatever was coming, we'd face it together. The house was quiet, but the air was thick, like it had absorbed every unspoken fear in the room. Lucky lay across my feet, not sleeping, just resting with eyes half open and ears twitching at each creak of the floorboards. Millie curled in a ball beside the couch, pressed so tightly into the corner that her nose was nearly buried in the cushion. Sam stood in the kitchen with the lights off, watching the tree line beyond the porch window. I checked the time again. 11:13 p.m. The raid was supposed to start at midnight. A clock ticked somewhere, louder than usual. I tried to drink water, but it tasted metallic, like my nerves had leached into the glass. I had the burner phone in one hand, Fuller's direct line already pulled up on the screen. Outside, Kane walked the edge of the property with a flashlight, careful not to shine it into the house. McGregor stood on the porch like a statue, one hand resting casually near his sidearm. They didn't talk much, but their presence gave me something to anchor to. At 11:21 p.m., the power flickered. Just for a moment. Barely a second. But every light in the house blinked at once, and Lucky sat up so fast I thought he'd jump through the window. Sam looked at me, then moved quickly to the hall closet, pulling out the emergency lantern. "You think that was them?" I whispered. "Maybe. Maybe not, but it means they're close." I crouched beside Millie, gently stroking her back. She was shaking. The burner phone buzzed. One new text. From an unknown number. "Time's up." I showed Sam. His jaw clenched. The clock read 11:32. Seconds later, the dogs started barking. Lucky was first, then Millie. But her bark wasn't strong. It was panicked, sharp, desperate. Lucky's bark, though, was deeper than I'd ever heard. Protective, urgent. McGregor was already at the door. "South side, movement in the trees." Sam went to the back window, pulled the curtain aside. "I see 3 shapes, no lights, moving in a line." Kane's voice crackled over the walkie. "I've got movement west side, not random. Too clean. Looks like they're surrounding the place." "Are they armed?" McGregor asked. "Can't tell. Not yet." I called Fuller. No answer. I tried again. This time he picked up. "We're moving now. Almost there. 5 minutes out." "They're here," he cursed under his breath. "Hold. Don't engage unless they breach. Reinforcements are coming." I turned every lock on every door again. Sam loaded the shotgun and handed me a small flashlight. McGregor stayed posted at the front door, peering through the peephole. 11:39. Something hit the side of the house. Not hard. More like a thump. A warning. Lucky snarled and bolted toward the noise, barking wildly. Sam caught him by the collar just before he could jump at the window. Another thump. This time from the opposite side. And then another. 3 sides of the house. A pattern. They weren't trying to break in. They were trying to shake us. Kane came running in. I found tracks, boot prints in the dirt, big ones. They know how to move without leaving a trail, but they wanted me to see these. Sam nodded. "Let's assume they're armed." I grabbed the dogs and moved to the interior hallway. No windows, no shadows, just the hum of fear buzzing under my skin. The lights flickered again. Then total darkness. Sam cursed and switched on the lantern. McGregor pulled his flashlight and aimed it at the front windows. Kane stood in the hallway near the back, weapon ready. Footsteps. On the porch. Then a tap on the window glass. I nearly screamed. Sam pointed the light. No one there. Just handprints. Smudged across the pane. Greasy. Large. Lucky growled so deeply I felt it in the floor. Another text came through on the burner phone. "Don't make me come in." McGregor grabbed the phone from my hand, stepped onto the porch, and shouted into the darkness. "You come near this door again. You're not walking away." Silence. Then the sound of retreating footsteps. Fast. Flashlight beams caught a figure slipping into the woods. Tall. Broad shoulders. Moving with purpose. I started shaking. I didn't realize it until Sam reached over and gripped my arm. "You're doing good. Just hold it together a little longer." Lucky sat beside me, panting hard, his eyes still locked on the door. Then came the sound of vehicles. Not one. Several. Headlights broke the tree line. Sirens cut through the silence like salvation. SUVs. Police cruisers. 2 unmarked vans. Fuller stormed up the porch. "Everyone safe?" Sam nodded. They didn't breach, but they were close. They were testing the water, seeing how far they could push you. Now they know. He turned to his agents. "Secure the perimeter. Get eyes on the whole property. If you find any dropped items, phones, weapons, even cloth, bag it. Chain was here. I'm sure of it." As officers fanned out across the yard, I stepped onto the porch, holding Lucky's leash tightly. Fuller noticed. "You okay?" "No. But I'm standing. That has to count for something. More than you know." He looked at Lucky, then back at me. "He's going to be a target until this ends, but he's also the reason we're closing in. Tonight pushed them out of hiding. The raid's still on, but now we have a better idea of who's protecting who." I wanted to ask what he meant, but he was already moving again. Inside, Sam was rechecking the locks. Kane helped McGregor bring in backup lanterns and restock ammo just in case. I walked into the bathroom where Millie had hidden again. She came out slowly, tail between her legs, but when she saw Lucky, she relaxed. The rest of the night was long and silent. No more threats, no more tapping. Just the slow return of power around 4:00 a.m. and the murmur of law enforcement through the windows. By sunrise, my nerves were shot. But Lucky was asleep, head on my lap, Millie curled beside him. Fuller stayed behind to coordinate the raid. Carolyn called just before noon. "We've got a location on Chain. He wasn't at the farm, but he's expected to meet someone at a rest stop near the state line. One of our informants passed along the tip. We're moving." "Do you need me?" "No. Stay put. If anything changes, we'll let you know. But keep your phone close." I didn't move from the porch all day. Sam brought me tea. McGregor sat beside me. Lucky stayed close, like a shadow. We didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. In the early evening, an officer jogged up to Fuller, who was still coordinating from the front yard. "They found something. In the woods, half a mile out." Fuller followed him. I trailed behind, curiosity overriding caution. They led us to a small clearing behind a fallen tree. Buried halfway in the dirt was a plastic box. Inside, a tattered blanket, a chew toy, a dog tag that said, "Ricky," and a photo of a man holding Lucky when he was still a small pup. Chain. No doubt. The date scrawled on the back. His first fight test. I had to turn away. Sam caught me before my knees gave out. "That's over now. He's not that dog anymore." And he wasn't. He was mine. And the people who tried to break us didn't know who they were dealing with. The photo of Chain holding Lucky felt like it had weight beyond the paper. I kept it in a sealed envelope, tucked deep in my bag, but even hidden it seemed to pulse, like a reminder that we weren't far from the world he came from. Seeing that man's face, twisted into something like pride while holding a puppy meant to be used and discarded, made my stomach knot. I didn't show the photo to Lucky. Of course, he wouldn't understand. But I couldn't help imagining what memories might be buried in that small, watchful mind. The state team moved quickly. Carolyn kept me updated through brief phone calls, coded and careful. They were tracking Chain, they said, moving in phases. The rest stop sighting led to a motel. The motel led to a warehouse. The warehouse to another holding facility tucked behind a closed-down landscaping company. Meanwhile, Lucky changed. He didn't bark as much anymore. He listened better. He started responding to commands I hadn't taught him, simple ones, like down and heel, but also strange phrases like front and watch. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But Sam watched too. "You sure you didn't teach him that?" he asked one afternoon, after Lucky perfectly followed a whispered command I'd only heard once. I swear I didn't. Sam rubbed the back of his neck. "Could be muscle memory. Dogs remember things, even from trauma. Sometimes especially from trauma." It made sense, but it also made me think about what Lucky had seen. What he'd been made to endure before he wound up under my porch light, cold and shivering. That night I sat with him in the living room while Millie slept nearby. I looked into his eyes and whispered, "Whatever they tried to turn you into, you're not that. Not anymore." He licked my hand, then laid his head in my lap like he knew. 2 days later, Caroline sent another message. "Warehouse locked down. 8 dogs recovered. Evidence matches the ledger. More to come. Stay vigilant." Sam printed the message and pinned it to the corkboard in the kitchen beside the trail cam photos and the security map he'd drawn. We were starting to piece it together. Chain's movement wasn't random. He was circling. Not just me. Maybe the dogs, too, or what they symbolized. The morning after that, McGregor walked in from his perimeter check with a frown. "One of the cameras is down. East tree line. Wire snapped clean. Not weather damage." Kane followed shortly after. "Found fresh prints in the dew. Deep ones. Same tread we saw before." "Wasn't that side guarded last night?" Sam asked. McGregor nodded. "I was on that rotation. Whoever it was came between patrols. 20-minute window." I didn't say anything, but I could feel it again. That sense, like the trees were breathing differently, like we were being watched, evaluated, toyed with. That evening, I went through the dogs' things. Lucky's collar, Millie's new chew toy, the battered crate I couldn't bring myself to throw away. I found the note again. The very first one. He wasn't supposed to be found. I ran my fingers across the words, wondering whose hand had written them. Had it been fear? Regret? Or something colder? Sam caught me staring at it. "Maybe it's time we stopped reacting. Maybe it's time we take the lead." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "We've got the dogs. We've got the attention. What if we use that?" We spent the next day making a plan. Fuller approved it with hesitation, but didn't stop us. Caroline called it risky, but admitted it could draw Chain into the open. The idea was simple. Bait. A public adoption event was scheduled at a park in Silver Creek, about 40 minutes east. Animal control was involved. So was the sheriff's office. It was real, but we'd use it as a smokescreen. The announcement would include Lucky's photo, a proud survivor of abuse now looking for a permanent home. But he wouldn't be up for adoption. He'd be there, though. Visible. Guarded. We'd set the trap. 2 days later, we arrived early to the park. The shelter set up a shaded tent with folding chairs, tables lined with leashes and pamphlets. Volunteers buzzed around preparing pens for dogs of all sizes. Millie stayed with Sam in a quiet tent nearby. Lucky and I stood under the main tent, close to the front, near a group of retirees petting senior beagles. The press release had gone out that morning. We were counting on word spreading. By noon, the park was full. Kids, parents, other dogs. A couple of news vans showed up to highlight the event. Lucky wore a bright red vest labeled Adoption Ambassador. His tail wagged politely, but he never let his guard down. Around 12:47 p.m., Sam's voice came through the earpiece. "Black truck, 2 men. 1 matches the sketch. Pulling into the north lot." My pulse spiked. McGregor confirmed it seconds later. "They've seen the tent. 1 man staying in the truck. Other walking in. Baseball cap. Hoodie. Tattoo visible. Chain." I crouched beside Lucky. "Easy. Just breathe." He didn't bark. Didn't growl. He stood perfectly still, head low, tail motionless. Chain moved through the crowd like he belonged there. Paused by the water station. Patted a golden retriever. Then turned, eyes locking with mine. He smiled. It wasn't big, just a slight curl of the mouth. Enough to chill me. Then he walked toward us. McGregor whispered, "Hold. Do not confront until signal." Chain stopped 6 feet from us, looked down at Lucky, then up at me. "That's a fine animal," he said casually. I nodded. "He's special. Hard to find ones like that. Good instincts, strong build. Doesn't flinch. He flinched once. He doesn't anymore." Chain smiled wider. "You don't look like the type who'd take a stray." "Lucky found me, not the other way around." Chain's hand twitched near his hip, something in his pocket. Then he leaned in slightly. "Some animals remember where they came from. Others just run in circles." I stood my ground. He remembers. That's why he's not going back. From the corner of my eye, I saw Kane signal. Time. I stepped back. In 2 seconds, officers swarmed. Chain didn't run. He didn't struggle. He just looked at me with a kind of admiration. Like he was impressed I'd stood tall. They cuffed him, read his rights, dragged him toward the cruiser. McGregor found a weapon on him. Small blade, curved, hidden in his waistband. Sam joined me seconds later. "You all right?" I nodded, but my legs were shaking. Lucky pressed against me, solid and calm. Chain shouted once as they closed the door. "This isn't over." But it was the last thing he said before the car pulled away. The crowd never knew what happened. Just saw a quiet arrest and an animal handler who looked like she'd seen a ghost. But Lucky knew. His eyes didn't leave that cruiser until it vanished over the hill. Later that night, back at Sam's, we didn't say much. Just sat around the table while the dogs dozed in the hall. Caroline texted us 3 words. "Well done, rest." But none of us really did. We knew this wasn't the end, not yet. The morning after the arrest felt like the eye of a storm. Everything around us was still, unnaturally quiet. Sam made a full breakfast, Bacon, eggs, toast, but no one touched much. I kept checking the windows, expecting the quiet to snap like a rubber band. McGregor stayed a few hours after his shift ended, just sitting on the porch, watching the trees like he didn't trust the silence either. Caroline called mid-morning. Her voice was lower than usual, not cautious, but heavy. Chain's being held without bail, multiple charges, transport, animal cruelty, weapons possession, the works. But here's the thing. He's not talking. Not to anyone, not even his lawyer. I glanced at Lucky. He was stretched out across the living room rug, his eyes half-lidded but still alert. "That's not like him?" I asked. We thought he'd cut a deal, save himself by naming partners. But he's gone quiet, which means one of two things. He's either not scared of what comes next, or someone bigger is holding the leash. That thought left me colder than I wanted to admit. Caroline didn't fill the silence. She let it sit with me. "Keep your eyes open," she added. "We're not done." By that afternoon, Kane had updated the patrol schedule to include overnight drone sweeps. Sam doubled up the locks again and made a new system of makeshift alarms, fishing line tied to old tin cans around the property edges. It felt like something out of a movie, but I didn't argue. Every piece helped. Millie had begun coming out of her shell more, trotting after Lucky with a bounce in her step. She barked for the first time at a squirrel, startling herself so much she fell sideways into a bush. Sam laughed, a real belly laugh, for the first time in weeks. It was short-lived, because the next day, we got mail. Not email, not a text. Actual mail. A single envelope with no return address, placed in our mailbox without a stamp. Sam opened it carefully, holding the paper between two fingertips. Inside was a printed photo. Grainy, black and white. Me, standing in the kitchen 2 nights ago, holding Millie, talking to Sam. The photo was taken through the window. Behind it, a line of typed text. The chains weren't his. They were mine. Sam passed it to McGregor, who read it without expression. Then folded it in half, tucked it into his coat, and said, "We've got a copy machine down at the station. I'll scan and forward." Carolyn called again that night. "We think Chain was part of something bigger. He wasn't just a handler, he was an enforcer. Someone else coordinated, someone who stayed back. The type that watches, collects, builds loyalty through fear." Any idea who? Not yet. But the text on that photo, we've seen it before. It's been sent to informants who went dark. Once that line shows up, things escalate. My hand clenched the phone so tightly I left red marks on my skin. What do I do? Don't go anywhere alone. Keep the dogs close. And if you get another message, don't open it inside. McGregor stayed that night. So did Kane. The house wasn't big, but we made it work. Sam moved a cot into the hallway. I left every light on. Around 3:00 a.m., the motion detector by the barn triggered. Not a bird. Not a raccoon. Something tall enough to block the sensor fully. Kane and Sam swept the area and found deep tracks in the mud. Just like before. But this time, there was a set of smaller prints behind them. 2 people. Someone was scouting again. Or taunting. The next morning, Lucky wouldn't leave my side. He followed me to the bathroom, sat outside the shower, rested his chin on my foot while I made breakfast. Millie picked up on the change too. Her tail stayed low, her ears alert. Then, during lunch, another letter arrived. McGregor got to it first. He opened it slowly, carefully. Inside, a small flash drive. No text, no signature. Fuller was called in. He arrived with 2 other agents and a laptop designed for exactly this kind of situation. No network connection, no Wi-Fi, air-gapped and secured. He inserted the drive. A single video file. It showed a dimly lit room. Bare concrete. Exposed pipes. 3 cages in the corner, 1 occupied. A dog. Thin, injured. Not Lucky, not Millie, but clearly abused. Then a voice. Warped. Distorted. "Return what's ours. This is just a reminder." The screen went black. Fuller looked up slowly. "They want leverage. They want to make you feel responsible." I stood. "What do we do?" "We find that place. We find that dog. And we shut this thing down." Carolyn arrived the next morning. In person. She didn't say much when she walked in, just nodded at Sam, nodded at me, then crouched to let Lucky sniff her hand. He did. Then licked it once and sat beside her. She looked at me and said, "I've got something." We went into the kitchen. She laid out a map and marked 3 red X's. "These are the sites connected to Chain, but this one," she tapped the 3rd X, "was leased under a different name, a woman, no arrest record, but we found her in old photos with Chain. Possibly a sibling, possibly more. She disappeared 2 years ago. Resurfaced last month in financial records linked to the flash drive vendor. You think she's the one behind this? If she isn't, she's close to the one who is." The new site was only an hour out, another warehouse, no exterior signage, but electrical records showed consistent usage. Too much for an abandoned building. Fuller coordinated a quiet approach. No lights, no uniforms. They'd move at dusk, enter through the side, confirm the presence of animals, and secure the space. I stayed home with the dogs. Sam paced like a man waiting for a call he didn't want to get. At 8:42 p.m., Fuller called. "We found them, 3 dogs, all alive, 1 in rough shape. Same cages as the video. The woman wasn't there, but we found something else." "What?" "Photos. Of you. Of Lucky, of this house. Files. Timelines." I sat down. "They've been watching since the beginning." Sam reached across the table and put his hand on mine. Fuller continued. "We've got the data now. We're running names. This isn't just about the dogs. It never was. Someone's trying to control a network. Lucky just disrupted it." He paused. "There's something else. One of the files is a letter from Chain, written months ago. A log, maybe. He talks about Lucky. Says he was the only dog that never broke. That he watched fights but never turned aggressive. Called him the Ghost. Said he'd ruin everything." I looked at Lucky, now asleep by the fridge, tail twitching softly. Caroline spoke beside me. "That's why they want him. Not because he failed, but because he survived without becoming what they wanted." I swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" Caroline didn't blink. "We find the Ghost's shadow, the person who trained Chain, and we take them out of the dark." Lucky lifted his head and looked at me, like he already knew. Sam kept the kettle going all night. No one really drank much of the tea, but having it helped. Caroline slept in a chair with her boots still on, and her jacket zipped to her chin. A map spread over her knees, and a red pen in her hand. She looked like she hadn't truly rested in weeks. I didn't blame her. None of us could afford to lower our guard. Lucky paced more than usual that night. He didn't bark, didn't whine, just moved in and out of rooms like he was checking that everything was still where it should be. He paused at every door before continuing, tail low, body tense. When he finally settled by the front window, he stared out so intently I joined him, watching the same patch of darkness, wondering what he saw. The files found in the warehouse detailed more than anyone expected. Chain wasn't working alone. He answered to someone called Marion. No last name, just Marion. The letters he'd written to her were obsessive, almost reverent. He referred to her as the one who saved him, who trained him, who taught him how to cut the fear out of animals like rotted meat. I couldn't finish the rest, but I learned something crucial from those files. Marion had never once stepped into the ring. She never handled the dogs directly. She was always behind the curtain, always giving instructions, always watching. She wasn't interested in money. She was building something, a system, a test. And Lucky had failed that test by surviving with empathy. The phrase she used in one note stuck with me. Survival through softness is betrayal. I'd never hated a sentence more in my life. Fuller coordinated a search based on the utilities Marion had used under various aliases. They found a small farmhouse 50 miles east, recently reconnected to the grid. No real furniture, no mail, just a few crates, empty water bowls, and a narrow trapdoor behind the fireplace that led to a sub-basement. There were shelves of VHS tapes, hundreds of them. Fuller didn't let me see what was on them, but I saw the look on his face after he did. He brought in federal agents the next day. Caroline stayed with us as the last net was cast. She didn't want to miss it. The plan was clear. The woman calling herself Marion had moved again, but one of the recordings from a trail camera outside the warehouse caught a partial plate on a white van. The vehicle had been seen parked outside an old veterinary clinic that had shut down during the recession. She'd been using it as a drop point for unsuitable stock, as her notes called them. I hated that term. The drop was scheduled for that night. No date, no names, just a time. 2:30 a.m. Lucky didn't rest at all. When the agents prepared to move, Caroline asked me if I wanted to come. Not close, just within sight, just to see. I said yes before she finished the question. Sam insisted on coming too. McGregor gave us a tactical radio and strict orders to stay in the vehicle. Fuller rode ahead with 2 vans full of officers. No sirens, no lights. We parked across the road under a canopy of trees. The building looked worse than I expected. Molded shingles, cracked windows, a crooked sign that once read, Farron Veterinary Services, missing its last 2 letters. The parking lot was half gravel, half weeds. 2:12 a.m. Nothing. 2:24. A van. White. No markings. It turned slowly into the lot and stopped by the side entrance. Headlights off. Doors didn't open right away. Fuller gave the signal. Officers swarmed silently from all angles. By the time the driver opened the door, they were surrounded. The woman who stepped out didn't run. She raised her hands slowly. She was tall. White hair pulled into a tight braid. Face unreadable. Marion. They arrested her without a sound. Inside the van were 2 dogs in crates, still breathing, still alive. One was missing an ear. The other had teeth worn down from gnawing metal. Both wagged their tails when the agents opened the crates. Sam squeezed my hand so hard I felt the bones shift. We didn't say a word on the drive home. That morning, the news broke. Animal cruelty ring dismantled. 9 arrested across 4 counties. Federal charges pending. Names not yet released. Caroline gave me a long look before she left. You did something most people wouldn't. You stayed when it got dangerous. You listened when it got loud. You made sure Lucky wasn't just a survivor. You let him become something else. I nodded. He's family. Exactly. Fuller called later with the full update. They'd tied Marion to over 30 dogs. Half never made it. The rest were scattered across shelters, backyards, some dumped in roadside crates. But now they had the names, the connections, the paper trail. And Lucky's ledger, the one that started it all, was the first solid evidence they'd ever had linking everyone. He's not just a dog, Fuller said. He's the crack that made the whole wall fall. Lucky, for his part, didn't act like any of that had happened. He chewed his toy, stole part of my sandwich when I wasn't looking, and barked at squirrels like they were sworn enemies. But he also did something he hadn't done since the beginning. He fell asleep with his belly up. Completely vulnerable. Completely safe. And Millie? She followed his lead. Slept with her nose tucked under his chin. Started gaining weight. Learned to fetch. One afternoon she brought me a stick so proudly that I nearly cried. Sam stayed longer than planned. Started building a bigger fence around the property, saying it was for the dogs, but spending more time smiling than measuring. The house didn't feel like a hiding place anymore. 1 week later, I got a final letter. Not a threat, just a file from Fuller. Marion's journal, or pieces of it. He'd redacted the worst parts, but one paragraph stood out. I made dogs loyal to fear. That was my gift. But he ruined the pattern. The shepherd. He looked at pain and didn't become it. He remembered and still trusted. That made him dangerous. That made him something I couldn't understand. I read it once. Then I tore it up. Some things didn't deserve to be remembered. Lucky barked from the kitchen. Millie joined in. Sam opened the back door and the two of them ran out into the yard, chasing nothing but sunshine. I followed them, because some things did deserve to be remembered. The sound of paws on grass, the safe quiet of a morning where no one was watching, a dog who refused to turn cruel, and a home rebuilt from the soft, steady pieces of trust. That was the ending Lucky chose. So I made it mine too.